101, pardon me there, with Sydney Walker. Okay. Technicalities here. I swear, I just work in IT. Okay. So, Sydney Walker with Coffee and Politics 101. And I am joined this morning by the Honorable Roberto Canas. He's the former judge of Criminal Court 10 in Dallas County. And if you remember, he was on the show in the early days with Honorable Magnus, who was the felony domestic violence court judge, and Honorable Canas was the misdemeanor domestic violence court judge. So thank you this morning for coming on.
Of course. No, thanks for the invite.
Yes, and I know that we sometimes emails get lost and all that great stuff, but you know, I never give up on my guests and having them on. So this morning we are talking about DUI and DWI cases. So driving under the influence and driving while intoxicated. So I know that when you were on the bench, that probably wasn't a whole lot on your docket, but now that you are back in operating as an attorney with Lisa McKnight Law Firm, right, you know, I'm sure someone has called you saying, hey, I need help with this. So if we could just start with defining those two in the eyes of the law. I'm an ADA, I'm coming after your client, or we're going to bargain on these charges.
Right. So the difference really between DWI and DUI in Texas anyways is, I want to say it's more than just semantics. There is, in my mind, a difference there. So DWI stands for driving while intoxicated. It's usually almost always used exclusively when alcohol is involved. Okay. And you have that traditional, you know, drunk person or buzz person or slightly, you know, intoxicated. That's where the words come from. So DUI means for driving under the influence. And where I think the difference lies is that driving under the influence is a little broader category than driving while intoxicated. So driving under the influence, I think, more encompasses situations where maybe it was drugs that are involved, or maybe someone just took too many of their prescription drugs, or their prescription is affecting them in a way that they didn't anticipate. And so, you know, you get those little bottles, or you get your prescription and says, do not operate heavy machinery, or do not drive when you're taking this pills, right? So it's a little broader. Intoxication, I think, is a little more focused. So that's where the difference comes. But otherwise, under the law, in terms of prosecution or defense or the punishment ranges, it's all the same.
It's all the same. So I did not consider that, you know, I've gone to the dentist. I've had my wisdom teeth pulled.
Yes.
I'm taking Tylenol with codeine because that's what is typically prescribed.
That's right.
And, you know, I wake up from, you know, being asleep, but I'm still groggy. Hey, I need to go pick up the kids or pick something up from the grocery store. And whoop, whoop, whoop.
That's right.
I get pulled over because I'm still under the, I call it haze. Benadryl used to do that to me. Promethazine, anybody who knows about Phenergan for anti-nausea. So those types of substances can get you in trouble and get you a DUI that is not alcohol related, because we all think this is all driven by, you know, I've been to the bar hanging out with my friends.
Right.
I've had too many cosmopolitans. I watched Sex in the City and just like that. So I've had too many cosmopolitans, and, you know, I'm going out with my girls.
Right.
And now I'm trying to, you know, drive back to the house, because at some point in time, pretty much, I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people have, you know, pushed the boundaries on, you know, driving back home, wherever, after they've been out partying, celebrating, whatnot.
That's right.
So what are the levels. So, okay, so let's say, because now you really have my brain clicking here. So how do they test my sobriety if I'm under the influence from an edible, some other drug that isn't necessarily going to come through a breathalyzer? So
That's right.
what goes on there?
Right. So typically the way they do that is, so like the Dallas Police Department has trained police officers who are DREs, drug recognition experts.
Okay.
So if you get pulled over and the officer who pulled you over knows that something's not right, but they can't smell alcohol in your breath, you didn't admit to just drinking 2 glasses of wine or whatever, but the officer knows something else is going on. If the officer themselves is not a DRE, they'll call a DRE into the scene, and the DRE can have you perform certain physical and mental tests to then begin to determine if you are under the influence of something. So I myself am obviously not an expert, but people can, like these officers supposedly, and on the defense side, we always argue that this is bogus, but the officers are trained to recognize certain changes in your body. So like one of them is called the nystagmus test. It's your eye vibrates when you're intoxicated. If you're told to, that's why you see people asked to follow an officer's fingers, because if they get you to look at a certain angle, your eye will vibrate back and forth when you're intoxicated. Yeah, and so that's the kind of evidence that is typically brought into a case like this.
Okay.
The next step past that, and I'll just say this, and if you want to talk about it more, we can, but the next step past that, if the officer does suspect drugs, they'll go get a warrant to then either have you pee in a cup or take your blood, and then to get medical proof of what might be affecting your.
Yes. Wow. So, that's opening up so much, because half-life, that means half of the amount of the drug that you initially took has left your bloodstream or urine. That means your body is processing it. Your liver is, breaking it down.
That's right.
Gosh, I mean, there are drugs that definitely build up in your system, that can show up in a urinalysis or blood test, but this is serious. And I do want to kind of go over some statistics, because the Department of Transportation says that, drunk driving killed 963 people in Texas last year. And as part of the before show conversation, you were telling me how many cases like this are coming into Dallas County courts.
Yes, I mean, there are 13 misdemeanor courts. 2 of them are dedicated almost 100% to domestic violence cases, like the court I presided over. Yes. The other 11, essentially, you could go look at their dockets, and 50%, 50, of their docket is DWI cases. That's the majority of what those courts do. I mean, you could call them DWI courts, because that's the majority of what they do.
That is ridiculous that we have that many people literally on the road. Out of the 24 hours that we're given in a day, the odds are that you are on the road with someone who is driving under the influence or intoxicated.
That's right. Yeah.
And putting your life in jeopardy.
Yeah. And those are the people that are caught, the ones who have their case at court, right? So
yes. Not to mention the ones that, slip through and are able to.
Right. So it's a prevalent problem.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So
there's no doubt about it.
So I'm coming to you, and okay, so let's talk strictly alcohol here. So What are those levels that will get me arrested through a breathalyzer?
Sure. So the 2 basic levels that the law first considers is the legal limit, which is 0.08.
Okay.
0.08 is the legal limit. Now, you can still be arrested for DWI even if your blood comes back as lower than that, or your breath comes back as lower than that, because DWI it's against the law to lose any of your ability to drive, even, but if let's say you're driving fine, you are handling it, but your blood test comes back at 0.08 or higher, you can be filed on just for that.
Okay.
The next level up is where the law gets more serious, is 0.15. So almost double the legal limit. A 0.15 is where the punishment range climbs up to a 1 year in jail versus 6 months in jail. And there are certain bond conditions, like you have to have an interlock for so much time. There are certain extra, I don't want to call them punishments, but conditions that kick in if you get to 0.15 or higher.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've seen blood results triple the normal range, like 0.24. Usually anybody who's higher than that, they've pretty much passed out in their car. So you don't see a lot of results much higher than that.
And I would assume those are people that have a chronic issue.
Yeah, if you're getting to 0.24, either you've had a really, really good time and now you're doing something a little irresponsible by driving.
Yes.
Right. Or it's usually a chronic situation, because
yes, that is unfortunate. So representing your client, then what do you do when you're looking at levels like that? And we'll go back to the under the influence, because I think that since edibles are becoming a bigger part of our culture and people kind of self-medicating themselves in that fashion, I want to revisit that.
Yeah, when you're talking to a client who's been charged with this, one of the first questions you ask is, and you touched on it just a few minutes ago, is it extrapolation. So the law says you have to be driving while intoxicated. So you can be intoxicated, not be driving, or if you're intoxicated now but you were driving 30 minutes ago, they can't charge you for 30 minutes ago. They have to prove you were driving while and you were intoxicated both at the same time.
Okay.
So how that becomes important is, like you were mentioning earlier, a blood test, a breath test may come several 30 minutes, sometimes even an hour or more after they have pulled you over.
Right.
So if I blow an hour after I've been pulled over and I'm at 0.10, that doesn't necessarily mean I was a 0.10 or even a 0.08 when I was driving.
Yes.
So you have to, there's a kind of a scientific formula. You have to say, okay, if you're a 0.10, you have to ask the question, is he coming down or is he going up? Because like you mentioned earlier, your body does process the alcohol out, but it also takes time for the body to absorb the alcohol.
Yes.
So if I just left the bar and I had just downed a beer 5 minutes before the police officer pulled me over, that alcohol is probably not in my blood yet, or it's not in my breath system. So, but when they test me, that the blood may have been absorbed. So that's one of the first questions, is like, okay, when did they pull you over? How long was it before they took the test? Fundamental question, right? And then it kind of goes from there. But talking to clients, especially first-time people, and this happens to just normal people, because like we were talking in the pre-show, just me and you, average people just going out with their friends. Oh, I only had 2 glasses of wine. I can handle it. I just live 2 miles away, blah, 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 And so it just happens. That's why there's so many cases also, because this is a crime that happens to normal people. Anyways, kind of counseling those folks and just say, look, it was a 0.16. You were double over, so you are, even though you're a first-time offender, there are going to be certain extra things that are going to kick in that are going to affect you if you had just blown a 0.12. And I've got a case right now where that happened too. I have a client exactly in that situation. I'm trying to negotiate the prosecutor to at least, because she blew a 0.16, which is just above the 0.15 that makes it a class A, and say, hey, can we just kick it down? She's a first-time offender. but he's digging at his heels. So I don't know if I'll be able to help her on that.
Oh, wow. Because I spoke with another judge about these, and Judge Huff said that the majority of the cases coming through Dallas are not DWIs. They're usually lower, and they're considered DUIs. And she on the bench hadn't seen a DWI in quite some time. And I thought, wow, that's like, why would I would think, why would the state, pardon me, negotiate down on the charges? Because I mean, we do know the statistics about drunk driving and how many lives can be lost and put in jeopardy because someone is operating a motor vehicle that can be deadly and result in vehicular manslaughter. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. No, that's right. That's
right.
So,
see, y'all have done such a great job with me.
But absorb quickly, yes. Yes.
So, you know, it's serious. But at the same time, you know, a lot of people, as you said, it happens to everyday people. Right. So I don't want people to have this, you know, perception in their mind that it's a particular type of person that ends up, you know, getting pulled over and being charged or getting a ticket for DUI, being arrested for DUI or DWI. This is not something that, you know, you have on a bandana, you got all the tats, you know, or, you know, you got a whole bunch of stolen stuff in the back of, in the trunk of the car. It's not this perception of a particular person. It could be me with my, you know, very much classic look here.
Right.
Perfect in an office setting. And sure enough, I went to happy hour with a couple of co-workers and I had 3 glasses of whatever. And now, you know, I'm weaving in the road a little bit.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And I'm not surprised that Judge Huff would say that she hadn't seen a lot of DWIs. You know, you don't see a lot in the felony courts because for it to become a felony, you have had to have been at least convicted twice before it kicks up to a felony. So when you get to your 3rd DWI, we're definitely talking about an alcohol problem issue. The mentality, and I think it's right, the mentality usually is to try to get people help, because you know, sending them to prison is not going to cure the underlying issues about why they drink or whatever. It's you want to get them to help so they can address those issues, control the drinking, and hopefully never been accused of it again. Right. But you see folks, and Judge Huff would see these folks, you know, 4th, 5th, 6th, they've been to the penitentiary already, you know, for DWI, you know, and it's just they're never going to be able to control it. So, you know, then the balance becomes and like you mentioned, you always know what the potential of a drunk driver can be. It can be disastrous. I mean, these drunk drivers wipe out whole families, right? Yes. But, you know, when you have a case where that didn't happen in this case, do you take it out on that guy, or do you still try to get him help, or what do you do? And so, you know, it's those kind of cases where it does cause some dilemma for those of us who practice in it, because you're like, well, there was no accident in this case. Let's try to get them help the 3rd time, right? You know. Right.
Yes, and I do want people to understand that in Dallas County, the judges have a lot of programs to get people the help that they need. So they're not going to jail, not ruining their record, so they can't get housing, you know, can't get a job, all of those things, which just makes recidivism a huge problem.
Right.
And because, you know, if someone does have a chronic issue with some kind of substance abuse, as we talked about with Judge Mays a couple of weeks ago, that, you know, there's usually some kind of underlying cause, divorce, medical crisis, PTSD, bipolar, they're schizophrenic, they have anxiety that's out of this world, whatever it is. And does incarceration really address those issues, or can we help them not go down that road and being incarcerated by getting them the help that they need? And I definitely, talking to DA Cruzo, I know that when he and a couple of other judges worked on getting the divert courts put together and stood up, that the assessment is such a huge part of this. So are your clients, or are the ADAs doing those types of things in these situations, so we're not, necessarily putting the public at risk by getting someone the help versus, they put us in danger because they were driving under the influence or while intoxicated?
Right. Yeah, I think it is definitely county by county. But I think Dallas County does a really good job of at least trying. And I think people have progressed far enough to know that, people who have a substance abuse problem, they probably need more than just one chance, right? It's hard to, even if a judge tells you got to stop, it's hard for people to do that, right? So,
right.
But at some point, you do have to ask the question, when is enough, or is it ever going to take? But I think Dallas County does a really good job. I've practiced in other counties where maybe rehabilitation or programs aren't necessarily at the forefront. I think that's getting better.
Okay.
But it may be more of a punishment first mentality, more to the, and I get it. Like you mentioned, it's a public safety issue for them, and I get that. But I don't think incarceration is going to help this issue.
Well, and especially, and I will say this in the United States, going to the big house or even the county jail doesn't necessarily get you rehabilitated.
Right.
That, the picture is painted that if you go to prison, that is what is supposed to happen. But sure, we do know that programs have been cut in prisons. And, it seems to be a thing. And I don't know if this occurred after 3 strikes. And it seemed to be, a money-making system with, I got to keep the beds filled here.
Right.
I'm not getting paid. Versus, it seems like in some other countries, and I would say European countries, that they're really trying to get you to not come back.
Right.
So, yeah. All right. So with that being said, let's talk about some of the penalties, because you touched upon this. So let's first start with DWI. What are some of these penalties that we are looking at? Should I, be in that situation and I'm going before a judge, and this is like my 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th time, I'm gonna say, yeah, y'all are gonna hand me off before I reach it to that level.
Right. Well, for a first-time offender, if your blood was not taken or your breath was not tested, or if it was tested and it was under a 0.15, so 0.14 or lower, then it's going to be a Class B misdemeanor. A Class B misdemeanor is punishable up to a maximum of 180 days in the county jail. Usually, in almost 100% of the time, a first-time offender is going to get probation. For the longest time, up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you never had the option of getting deferred probation for DWI, which meant that it was only straight probation. And for those who don't know, straight probation means you actually have a conviction on your record, even though you didn't go to jail. Deferred means if you take the probation, successfully complete it, you can honestly say you've never been convicted of that. Deferred was not an option, even for a first-time offender, for a very long time. That law changed a few years ago. So now you can get deferred. If you've been convicted once of DWI, or you blow, or your blood comes back at a 0.15 or higher, that's a Class A misdemeanor. And so a Class A misdemeanor is punishable up to 1 year in the county jail. Probation's still an option. can't remember right off the top of my head if deferred is open to those folks. I don't think it is, but yeah. And so the next one up there is a third degree felony. Third degree felony are for those folks who have been convicted at least twice of DWI before, okay? And a felony, third degree felony is a maximum punishment of 10 years in prison, minimum of 2 years. Typically, at least in Dallas, your first felony, you're gonna get probation on that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if for any subsequent ones after that, they stay felonies. It can be your DWI fourth, your DWI fifth. It's everyone past the third. It's going to be it's going to be a question mark, big question mark, whether you're going to get probation again or you're going to get sent down to the penitentiary. And so,
oh my gosh, yeah, that's kind of scary.
Right. And
thinking from being Jane Q of general public, that we're giving these kind of chances, which I hear it. Right. But at the same time, I don't want to be in the hospital. I don't want any of my loved ones being in the hospital or being in a wreck as a result of someone who is, driving behind the wheel.
That's right. And so it's interesting how the law has changed over the last couple of years in terms of some of it has gotten harsher, some of it's gotten less harsh. So, it used to be that when it came to felonies, you couldn't use a prior DWI to make the punishment greater if that DWI had happened 10 years in the past or more.
Okay.
Now they got rid of that. It doesn't matter when you got your DWIs. They can go back 30 years to enhance you today, to make the punishment greater. So in some ways,
I could have been, college, frat boy, whatever. And now I'm 58 and I went to Fearings down at the Ritz-Carlton, had too many drinks, and instead of getting a hotel room, I went ahead and said, oh, I live downtown. I'm already downtown.
Right.
Ride to the house. And whoop, it's the sound of the police.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
You would think with that much time, but I kind of understand why they're saying, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. And so, and then of course, if someone does get hurt or if there's an accident or if someone gets killed, then the punishments are much greater. We're talking second degrees, lifetime, kind of punishment. Yes. So, yeah.
Yes. Oh gosh. So, anyone that is viewing this, please share the information. Honorable Roberto Canas is on discussing the difference between DWIs and DUIs, and the punishments that can come as a result of being pulled over, your blood alcohol level being at a particular level. And so now we're going to shift gears and get into those substances that we're not necessarily going to be seeing in a breathalyzer test. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to, have a UA done, urine analysis, or, have blood drawn to see what is in your system. And I would hate to be pulled over because I was on Benadryl. My allergies. And I'm driving a bit reckless. Because, that is over the counter. Nobody thinks of that as being, something that could put someone in harm's way because, I'm taking it for my allergies and it is doing a number on me, and I am operating, heavy equipment that can cause bodily injury.
That's right.
And now, so let's shift gears. So now, here I am, I've called you, you have taken my case, and sure enough, I had a partial brownie at a friend's house, or I've gotten some Delta 8, whatever's, gummies, vape sticks, all this kind of stuff. And, just hanging out in the backyard with some friends. And it's getting late. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and drive home instead of Ubering home.
Right.
Now, the sound of the police is behind me.
Right. And so So the analysis then becomes, how can they prove the level of what the intoxicant is in your body? And if it's not a common drug, or whether it's legal or illegal, it may be hard to even know if that can intoxicate you, right?
Okay.
And so so then the analysis becomes, how did the police get how did they get the substance from your body, blood? And then you're talking about search warrants and whether those were legal and all those things. But in terms of the DWI proving the intoxication, it does make the case harder for the state to prove that. I think if just depending on I think if it's straight up like a brownie with marijuana or some other, then it's a little easier, obviously. But then it becomes that
TCH or THC, whichever one it is more common. And let's say, I am legally prescribed this because I'm losing weight because of a medical illness that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So this is part of my daily regimen as part of my self-care, but yet I'm not driving the best that I could.
Right. And I think that's the question. And so, these cases are a little more rare in the courts. I don't know if that means that the police officers are exercising a little more discretion. Like if you get pulled over and you say, I just took some Benadryl. I had no idea. I take it all the time. It never affects me this way. But today it's just hit me the wrong way.
Yeah, the moon was in the right position and I'm a werewolf and I'm driving crazy.
Right. If in those situations, the police are letting you call a friend to take you home or they give you a ride home or something,
Okay.
So, because they are a little harder to prove. And so maybe the officers in those situations are using a little more discretion because those cases are rarer. But I think it's interesting to look at different states like Colorado where marijuana is legal.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know this for a fact, but the last I kind of heard about this topic was the police were beginning to see more DUIs based on these drugs, because now it's legal, right? It's like going to a bar and having a beer, right?
Right.
So, if Texas
legalizes it, yes.
It'd be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and people do want marijuana legalized.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that I have participated in, conventions and pushing that legislation through. But I'm also, I'm a bit of a hermit. I'm a homebody. Yeah. So I don't want to tell on myself, but when you're in college, you do things when the intercession is in, it's Christmas break or spring break, whatever. I didn't have to be with friends to do what I needed to do. I'm on the couch. I got my goodies. I got my drink. I got my Cheetos, Doritos, whatever. And I'm content being home and not being out. And I will say that for the most part, whomever I'm dating or with, they know if I'm going to drink, you better not. If you're going to drink, I'm not going to do it because one of us has to be of sound mind. So, I'm not necessarily sure why people, take the risk. I would prefer just to get tipsy at my own house than do it at a restaurant, but that's me.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that with states that have legalized marijuana, that there is going to be, or they're seeing an uptick. And you would think, logically, you are going to see an uptick of people driving under the influence of some kind of, legalized substance. I'll just say that, legalized substance, because, with people that have, just like we discussed with Judge Mays that was on, people that are having addiction problems to Oxycontin, fentanyl, those types of substances, they can still be out there operating, heavy equipment that can cause bodily injury.
That's right.
I want people to understand that. Yes.
Right. It sounds to me, Sydney, like you've got the germ for another show. Like if Texas ever gets on the cusp of legalizing it, get some experts in here and say what's been going on in other states and what do we think we're going to see. So I think that's an interesting topic.
Yes, and it's seeing how the state legislature in Texas is red, it's Republican, being conservative. I can see that marijuana legalization really isn't going to happen until campaign checks start getting written.
That's right.
For candidates in order to get this pushed through.
Well, I'll tell you, yeah, and
yes,
I think it's relevant.
Please.
I think it's relevant to our subject matter. So, I sit on the board of directors for the Dallas Bar Association, and one of the things that the board of directors has been approached with is creating a cannabis law section. And so for lawyers who might be based out of Dallas, but practice in those states where, they have another license in another state where it's legal there. And so, I think you're exactly right when you say it's the business is going to dictate whether the law gets changed or not. Because once people realize, hey, there's money to be made, that's when you see the legislature taking action, right? And so
yes. And for those that want to do it, yes,
it's coming.
I will invest. I will write checks and invest because mommy loves her shoes, and they're a pair of Mary Jane's that Jessica Parker has designed. They're not Milano Blahniks, so the price tag is not up there, but I definitely love my shoes. So so this is very interesting, and thank you for coming on the show to help us understand that DUI is definitely a broader scope of being under the influence, not just of alcohol, but any substance that can impair your ability to operate heavy machinery. I hate to say it like this, heavy machinery, because also with Amazon coming to Dallas, more warehouse jobs, you can easily get a DUI from HR if you are operating heavy equipment while you're on the job. So I do want people to understand that it's not just limited to being on the street in a motor vehicle. So with that being said, okay, let's say I am I'm a class clown. I got that title when I was in high school. And so, I'm out at Clyde Warren Park hanging out with friends, and I get a little bit too rowdy. And everybody who knows me knows that I am loud, sober. So can you get, being under the influence of a substance? I'm sure it's not called a DUI, but I'm creating a nuisance and I'm under the influence. So how does that work? And does that fall into this category of the subject that we're talking about?
Sure. It's called a public intoxication charge. So, usually that's reserved for people who are intoxicated and kind of causing a scene, maybe bothering other people. It's the minimal charge. Although to me, it's not, the punishment is probably I don't know, this might be okay. But anyways, it's a Class C misdemeanor, which is essentially a ticket.
Okay.
But it's the kind of ticket that will take you to jail. So the police officers will arrest you, deprive you of your freedom, and take you to jail for the night to let you sober up. And then in the morning or whatever, you get out, right? And then you have to come back to court to pay your fine. And you'll see that much more common, probably even more so than DWIs, the Class B's, Class A.
Okay. Well, that is good to know. That is good to know. So my fellow viewers, as you're sharing this information to your loved ones and your friends, do get people to understand that this is serious. And if you were in Dallas County, yes, there are programs that will help you get to the bottom of your issue. If this is a chronic problem, and it may feel like, as a first timer, you're on probation and everything, you're kind of like feeling like you're skating through here and you got off, basically, especially if this is deferred. So I do want to switch gears on you and talk about, what happens if you're on probation and you're getting deferred, because you said 180 days in county jail. Okay.
Right.
So we're deferring the jail time. So what happens if you violate another law during that probation period? What happens then?
Yeah, committing a new offense while you're on probation is probably one of the more serious probation violations you can commit, right? There's a lot of technicals you can commit. Usually the judges will, there's a whole variety of reactions a judge could have, but committing a new offense while you're on probation is probably one of the hardest ones and the most serious ones, right? Because the whole point of putting you on probation the first time was like, okay, we hope you learned your lesson. You're gonna kind of
get into any more trouble.
Yeah, don't get any more trouble. Get your life together. Move forward. Right?
Like, was this a butthole puckering moment for you?
Exactly. And then if you pick up another, especially if you're on probation for an intoxication offense, and then you pick up another intoxication offense, there's good in it. There's a double-edged sword there. The good side is, well, especially if you were on deferred probation, you haven't been officially convicted of that DWI. So if you picked up
like you're back at being a first-time offender.
It's still a class B, even though you're on probation for it. But the judge is going to be like, okay, no, you didn't learn your lesson the first time.
Yeah. So then, did you get those 180 days? Then is the question.
Then my job as your lawyer would be, judge, okay, they didn't learn their lesson the first time. There's a little problem here. Can we send them to substance abuse? And the judge may say yes to that, but the judge has a discretion under the law to just give you what we call days as a condition. Days in jail as a condition of your probation.
Okay.
You don't get good time credit for these days, and there's no good time pardon for it either. So if the judge says, I'm going to give you 30 days in jail, you're serving 30 days in jail. No ifs, ands, or buts. And so that's often and the law has written into it, if you have been convicted once before and you get a new law, you have to do a minimum part. And the judge sentenced you to probation. The judge has to order a minimum amount of jail time for you. So a judge is very highly likely to give you days as a condition. What people really hate are those breathalyzers on their car. People find them embarrassing. They can cause technical problems. You can't start your car. And, if people use their car for business or whatever, could you imagine a real estate agent rolling around? They have to blow in and they're showing clients.
Okay, so I'm Judge Walker. Look, boo.
Right.
Oh, well, you should have thought about that. I'm sorry that you were embarrassed, but baby, go do it.
Yeah, that's
blow
right.
on that. Okay,
That's
see,
right.
now we're talking about a different blow job.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, as a lawyer, I mean, that's the chief complaint that I get from my clients is, when can I get this thing off my car?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, they want to make sure that you're not operating this heavy equipment, machine, that can do bodily harm and injury. So let's say, you're on probation, it's deferred, and you commit not a new DUI or DWI offense. Let's say family assault. I got an RTB for child abuse, or, something else. I did not put my blinker on, or I rolled through a stop sign. Something like that happens. So what happens then?
Yeah, so it's going to be case by case, and I think some of the, like, even in the examples you just gave, I mean, if we're talking a more serious, and if it's even if it's a different kind of offense, burglary or whatever, usually a drug charge or something, the judge who has you on probation may still cut you some slack, depending on how you handle that in court or whatever. If it's a ticket, it's the judge is not going to bring you down for that. And usually they'll just leave it to a probation officer to craft some kind of response to hold you accountable, whether it's more community service hours or
or a longer probation period,
things of that nature. So it really will be case by case.
Case by case. Okay.
But it's because there's some unpredictability though. That's what I always tell my clients is like, look, you just want to toe the line and walk the straight line because you don't know, nobody can tell you what's going to happen in that situation.
Right. So let's not roll the dice.
No, roll the dice.
Don't even jaywalk.
Right. Just don't put yourself in a position where,
something else can happen. Well, that has been very informative. So, gosh, it's a lot to consider. In Texas being a conservative state, definitely I can see more counties being more on the punishment side versus let's get you some help. Try not to do this, kind of scare someone into, you got off like this time. So let's not push, the limits on thinking that, you have the carte blanche credit card and you can just do whatever it is that you want to. So I definitely want people to understand that these are serious charges. And as you said, not get into any other kinds of issues.
That's right.
While you're on probation, especially another, intoxication or under the influence situation. So anything else that you want to add for our viewers with this? Because again, this kind of offense doesn't know a particular look, a particular type of person. It can be the soccer mom, it could be the grocery store clerk, it could be the CEO of a company.
Right. Yeah. And I think probably the one thing we haven't touched on that may be interesting or relevant here would be, DWIs is probably the one crime where it will be very expensive to handle. Okay. And like I was saying earlier, the law has changed, and they've raised some of the mandatory fines that go with the DWI. So it has become more expensive to be charged with it and to resolve it in the courts.
And with you saying that, so if you have ever seen any of the billboards, and it usually happens around July 4th or Labor Day.
That's right.
$10,000 for driving under and they say DUI. I haven't seen one just strictly for DWI, but
yeah. And then, of course, attorneys, there are attorneys, and I don't blame them one bit, but there are attorneys who pretty much their whole practice is just DWIs. And so while they gain a lot of expertise in this area, which can be very complicated. So again, they're doing the right thing for themselves and their practice, becoming experts. But it becomes expensive to hire attorneys to handle the case, even if you're a first-time offender. So, I mean, if you get pulled over and charged even for a first-time DWI, I mean, you're looking minimum $2,500 to $4,000 expense. Yeah.
Yes.
And so it can become very expensive. And I don't know,
it's that kind of money just sitting around just to throw away.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I won't call you out on this, but I've been around long enough to remember the beginning of the DWI campaign, right? It's like, hey, you don't want to do that, get a friend.
Thank you.
You just got out of college. I went to college like 30 years ago, right? So, I remember it's like, hey, you got to get a designated driver. I remember the beginning of that campaign and stuff. And I agree 100% with you. Me and my wife, if we're going to have a party, we try to invite folks over to our house, number one, so we're not driving. And, we just know, hey, if we're both going to have a glass of wine, we're done. We're not moving it. We're not leaving the house. To even go get a burger or something, right?
No. No. I have had staycations, and the whole point of the staycation was to hit up the hotel bar, and do my thing and then stumble up to my room.
There you
and
go.
anyone who has hung out with me at the Ritz-Carlton knows that we have seen some shows there with all kinds of crazy behavior. So it seems like, well, it doesn't pay, to take the risk. And so even with the deferred, and I do want people to understand this, that yes, it may not show up on a background check, but you go to court, that record still exists. It's not completely, wiped out at all. It still shows up that you have gone through the process of this. So I guess at that point, does it become a thing of judicial discretion or ADA discretion on how far they're going to push the line with the charges, what they're offering as far as punishment, what you can and cannot get out of with being a repeat offender, even if it is a second time and it is 12 years later?
Right. And so, you bring up a good point that we haven't touched on yet. And that is, as I mentioned before, it's been for a very long time, you could never get deferred for a DWI. So if you pled to it or went to trial and lost, it would be on your record for the rest of your life.
Right.
One of the things that changed in the law recently is that you can get your DWIs expunged, but you have to wait years to do it. And interestingly enough, a part of the determination of how long you have to wait will determine how long you had a breathalyzer on your car. And so if you had it on for a certain period of time, then you don't have to wait as long to get your case expunged. But if you didn't have it on for a certain length of time, then you have to wait longer to get your case expunged. And then of course, if you get convicted, it never gets expunged from your record.
Okay. Wow. So the breathalyzer becomes a measuring stick. It sounds like that. Okay, you have had to prove your sobriety each and every time you've gotten behind the wheel of a car. So that seems to be you're more trustworthy, it sounds like, because you've had to demonstrate this every time, versus if you didn't have the breathalyzer, what's the odds? Or you were still out there, trying to roll a 7 or 11 and not get busted or get busted. I'm sorry. I use a lot of colloquialisms. I'm trying to.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, that's how that's the way to communicate. I use the same language when I'm talking. So to clients,
where they are, and this is, I cannot stress enough that it is very serious. And for those that have children that are going to be going off to college and experiencing their independence for the first time, they need to understand the gravity of what is put before them. Because, I've had stepchildren. And I've told them, state of Texas, 17, baby, you are considered something totally different. And yes, mentally, emotionally, you may still be that child.
That's right.
You were no longer that child by the state of Texas.
Right.
So I want people to understand that, they're babies. They are their babies. Totally get it. I have one. She's going to graduate. She is still my baby. And so, you want to protect them as much as possible and get them to understand that, yes, you're going to be out there experimenting with life in those types of things, even though they may still not be legal age to have alcohol. You're still going to get access to it. And understand that these are not charges that you want against you, whether you're in Dallas County or not. That this is serious. And if you are, in our northern counties, going to those universities versus SMU, totally different ball of wax, totally different judicial system. Because in some of those counties, surrounding counties, you have one judge that's doing civil and criminal and family, all of it. I cannot imagine being that kind of judge and having to know the rules and regulations on all three of those areas.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's another great idea for maybe another show, because you'll see the disparity in how DWI cases, or all cases really, but DWIs in particular, you get stopped in Dallas County, your experience will be way different if you get stopped in Ellis or, Johnson or whatever, and so yeah, you're exactly right about it. And, right now we're in election time, as you well know. And so, if you're trying to do a plea where you're asking for some leniency in the month of February, it may not be all that easy, because, I don't agree with it when politicians say it, but like, even you'll hear ads right now saying, I was a judge and I kept criminals in behind bars. It's like, well, that's not necessarily your role as a judge, but it's to be fair, but I get it. And so it's tough to ask be looking for leniency at certain points,
I mean, especially, hard on crime, letting criminals get off soft. And I don't know necessarily why, the types of programs that are available are seen as being light on crime, especially, when we're dealing with, a population that's under 25. Anybody who has watched the show knows I have stressed time and time again that brain does not fully develop until 24.
That's right.
So, we have a whole lot of 50 and 60-year-olds walking around here with the emotional intelligence of a 10-year-old.
That's right.
And it's just a fact of life.
That's the way it is. That's the way it is.
Well, Honorable Canas, I am so happy that we worked it out. It got you on the show. It was great to see you again. And I swear, Honorable Magnus, he had me in stitches. I did not know that he was that kind of character.
That's right. No, he's a character. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Again, thank you for coming on and discussing this topic. Everyone, share this with your loved ones, your friends, folks that are going off to college in the fall, anybody who needs the education. They have a friend, you have a loved one, you want to keep them out of harm's way. Yes, it's great that you can get a fantastic attorney like my guest that knows the ins and outs and will work on your behalf, but why take the chance?
Right.
Especially, in this day and time where we have more substances that people are using. And that's going to be a show coming up this summer. Pain Doctor I had on with Judge Mays. And I do want to dabble into that edible Delta 8, things that people are taking on themselves to manage, PTSD systems, anxiety, or, whatever it is that's going on in their life. So again, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
On. And it was great having you and visiting with you, although we're doing it virtually instead of in person.
Right. No, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate it. So, guys, I want you all to stay safe out there. The weather is not cooperating as well as I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be warmer and we were going to have sun. So next weekend, we're going to have on Councilman Moreno and Raleigh on the show. We're going to touch on redistricting because there's a lot of discussion going on. I know for myself, there was a lot of discussion if I was going to be in District 4, City Council District 4, or if I was going to be rolled into City Council District 2. Wasn't sure if I was even going to stay in 7. So tune in for that show. And again, like, share, and pass on the word about this show because this was a very educational topic. And again, thank you for coming on and having this session with us.
You bet, of course.
All righty. So guys, enjoy your time with your loved ones and friends. And we will see you next Saturday at 10 o'clock.